She lost to her a year ago. Then she made history. She once cried on a podium holding a runner-up trophy, beaten by a girl she'd never faced before. 360 days later, she walked onto the most famous tennis court on earth and beat that same girl. And then, 48 hours after that, she did something no player from her country had ever done in the entire open era of tennis. This is the story of Eala. And if you think you already know how it ends, you don't. Stay with me, because the twist in this one isn't the comeback everybody already posted about. It's what happened 2 matches later, against a woman holding a Wimbledon trophy from the year before. Before we get into it, if you care about tennis underdogs, hit subscribe now, because this channel is about to cover the next chapter of this story the moment it happens, and you do not want to find out secondhand. The loss that started everything. Let's go back to July 2025, to a tournament called the Eastbourne Open, on the English South Coast, grass courts, 1 week before Wimbledon, the last tune-up before the biggest stage in tennis. Eala had never reached a WTA singles final before in her life. She was 20 years old, a wild card who'd spent years grinding through junior tournaments and challenger events, training at Rafael Nadal's academy in Mallorca since she was a young teenager. And suddenly there she was, across the net from an Australian teenager named Maya Joint, playing for her first tour-level title. Here's what most retellings of this story get wrong. They make it sound like Eala got blown off the court. She didn't. What actually happened was worse, in a way, because it was so close. Joint took the first set 6-4. Eala fired back and took the second set 6-1. And then the third set went to a tiebreak, and not just any tiebreak. Eala had 4 championship points, for chances to win her first WTA title, on grass, 1 week before her Wimbledon debut. She couldn't convert a single one. Joint saved every one of them and closed it out 7-6, at 12 points to 10 in the breaker. For match points, gone. That is the kind of loss that doesn't just hurt for a night. That's the kind that follows a young athlete around for a year, whispering. And a week later, on her Wimbledon debut, Eala walked onto center court against the defending champion, Barbara Krejcikova, and lost in 3 sets, 3-6, 6-2, 6-1. First Grand Slam main draw of her career. First round exit. So by the time 2025 ended, this is the picture. A teenager with genuine talent, genuine highlights, and genuine heartbreak sitting right next to each other. Because here's the thing nobody talks about when they tell the redemption version of this story. Eala had already proven, months before Eastbourne, that she belonged with the very best players alive. Miami, the warning nobody heeded. Rewind further, to March 2025, the Miami Open, one of the biggest tournaments on the entire calendar, a WTA 1000 event, stacked with the top players in the world. Eala got in as a wild card. She was ranked 140th in the world. Almost nobody outside the Philippines had heard her name. She beat Elena the 2017 French Open champion, in the second round. She beat Madison Keys, the reigning Australian Open champion, ranked 5th in the world, in the third round 6-4, 6-2. She got a walkover past 10th seed Paula Badosa in the 4th round. And then, in the quarterfinals, she walked out against Iga Swiatek, 5-time Grand Slam champion, ranked world number 2, and beat her 6-2, 7-5 in 1 hour and 39 minutes. Think about that for a second. A 19-year-old wild card ranked outside the top 100, and she didn't just compete with a 5-time major winner. She dominated the first set and then held her nerve to close out the second. She became the first Filipina ever to reach a WTA 1000 semifinal, and the win over Swiatek guaranteed she'd crack the world's top 100 for the first time in her career, and in the history of her country's tennis. "I'm just in disbelief right now," she said afterward. "I'm so happy, and so blessed to be able to compete with such a player on this stage." This is the player Maya Joint beat 4 months later. Not a lucky qualifier, not a nobody. A player who had already beaten a 5-time Grand Slam champion on the sport's biggest stage. That's what made the Eastbourne loss sting the way it did. It wasn't a case of a player finding out she wasn't ready. It was a case of a player who had already proven she belonged, suddenly losing 4 match points in a row to someone who, at the time, was ranked well outside the top 50. So what do you do with that kind of result sitting in your head? You carry it onto the next surface, into the next season. And for Eala, the next stop was clay. The surface she says she's still learning to trust, even though she grew up around it at Nadal's academy. The grinding, uneven road through clay. Here's where the story gets messier than most people want to admit, and this is where I want to slow down because this stretch is the part that actually explains everything that came later. Eala opened her 2026 clay season at the Linz Open in April and lost in the second round to Elena Ostapenko. 4-6, 5-7. A tight match, not a blowout, but a loss all the same. She moved to Stuttgart and lost in the first round to Leila Fernandez in straight sets. She traveled to Madrid, and this time there was a genuine highlight. She beat former French Open finalist Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova in the opening round, before running into Elise Mertens in the second round and losing in straight sets. Then came Rome, and this is where you start to see the player who would eventually explode onto the grass. She beat Magdalena Freck. She beat Wang Xinyu. Back-to-back wins, genuine form, a run to the third round of one of the biggest clay events in the world, before she ran into Elena Rybakina, the world number 2, and lost in straight sets 6-4, 6-4. A respectable loss to one of the best players alive, but a loss nonetheless. Her last stop before the French Open was Strasbourg, and it might be the most painful result of the entire stretch. A 3-set battle against a qualifier, Alexandra Oleynikova, that lasted almost 3 hours. Eala led. She fought, and she still lost 6-3, 5-7, 3-6. And then Roland Garros itself, the French Open, the biggest clay tournament on earth. Eala drew Iva Jovic in the first round. Here's a detail that makes this one sting differently than the others. Jovic is a friend. The two have actually played doubles together. And Eala lost to her 6-4, 6-2 in the very first round. By any measure, that's a rough 5 months. For wins, 5 losses across the clay swing, most of it against players ranked above her, some of it against players she genuinely could have beaten. This is not the story of a player quietly building confidence in the background while everyone waited for her real season to start. This is a player who kept losing, kept traveling, kept showing up, and kept absorbing results that would make plenty of athletes start questioning themselves. So when the tour shifted onto grass, her best surface, the surface where she'd need to somehow turn this season around before Wimbledon, nobody outside her team really knew what to expect, including maybe her. The turn? Queens, then Birmingham. The grass swing didn't start with fireworks either. At Queen's Club in London, Eala ran into Iva Jovic again, the same player who'd just beaten her at the French Open and lost again, this time in the round of 16. 2 losses in a row to the same player on 2 different surfaces in the space of about 2 weeks. If you were writing the pessimistic version of this season, this is exactly where you'd put the sentence. And it just kept getting worse. Except it didn't. The very next week, Eala arrived in Birmingham for the Lexus Birmingham Open, a smaller WTA 125 level event, but the top seeds tournament to lose. And there, in the final, she ran into her own doubles partner, Nikola Bartankova of the Czech Republic. This one deserves its own moment, because of a detail that makes it more interesting than just, she won a title. Eala had never beaten a Czech opponent on tour before this match. Not once. She'd lost to Barbara Krejcikova. She'd lost to Marketa Vondrousova. She'd lost to Karolina Muchova earlier that same year at the Miami Open. Whatever this specific matchup was, it had never gone her way. She went out to Bartankova in the first set, 5-7. Most finals are decided right there. You drop the opener against a red-hot opponent, momentum swings, and it's over. Instead, Eala took the second set 6-3, forced a decider, then had to save 3 break points in the very last game of the match before finally closing it out, 7-5. 2 hours and 38 minutes. Her first WTA singles title win since claiming the Guadalajara Open the previous September. "I am so honored to be lifting this trophy today," she said afterward. "Lifting this trophy does not mean that I will be among the greats yet, so I'm motivated to keep working." It was one title at one smaller tier event, but it broke something, call it a curse, call it a mental block, call it whatever you want. She'd finally beaten a Czech player. She'd finally closed out a tight final instead of losing one. and she carried that straight into the biggest week of grass tennis she'd ever played. Berlin, 2 nights, 2 statements. 1 week after Birmingham, Eala entered the Berlin Open, a WTA 500 event, a full tier above what she'd just won, and stacked with far tougher players. She got in as a wild card. First, she beat Donna Vekic. Solid, professional, nothing flashy. Then, in the round of 16, she faced Elena Rybakina, the very same Elena Rybakina who had beaten her on clay just weeks earlier in Rome. And this time, the result flipped. Eala beat the world number 2, 7-5, 6-4. 2-time Wimbledon finalist Rybakina, one of the heaviest hitters in the sport, and Eala outcompeted her on grass. "I am a little foggy right now," Eala said in her on-court interview. "I'm still shaking, and I was shaking on match point, too." Less than 24 hours later, she was back on court against Elena Svitolina, ranked 8th in the world, a former top 3 player and one of the most experienced competitors on tour. Eala raced out to a 3-0 lead and never let go, closing it out 6-3, 6-4, in an hour and 23 minutes. 2 ranked top 10 wins, back-to-back, on the same surface, in the same week. The first time she'd strung together consecutive top 10 victories since that unforgettable Miami run more than a year earlier. Her run finally ended in the semifinals against Linda Noskova, the Czech world number 13, that cursed opponent again, who beat her 6-2, 6-4. But by that point, the loss almost didn't matter. Something had already changed. This was 6 career top 10 wins now. 9 wins against just 1 loss on grass for the entire season. A player who, 3 months earlier, had been losing first-round matches on clay to qualifiers, was suddenly beating the second-best player alive twice in the same month. 1 setback before the big one. If this were a movie, the story would go straight from Berlin to Wimbledon glory. Real life doesn't work that cleanly. 1 week before Wimbledon at the Bad Homburg Open, the very last grass tune-up, Eala lost in the first round to Elise Mertens, the same player who'd already beaten her twice that year, in straight sets, 3-6, 3-6. She did get a bright spot out of the week. She and tennis legend Venus Williams teamed up in doubles for the first time, won their opening match together, before falling in the quarterfinals. But the headline was the singles loss. 1 week before the tournament that would define her season, and the player who was supposed to be dangerous on grass had just been beaten in straight sets, in her final tune-up. It's the kind of result that, if you didn't already know what was coming, would make you nervous for her. And then she walked into the All England club, seeded for the first time ever. Here's a number that matters more than people realize. Alex Eala arrived at Wimbledon 2026 seeded 29th. It was the first time in her career she had ever been seeded at a Grand Slam, and the first time any Filipino player, man or woman, had ever been seeded at Wimbledon. Seeding sounds like a technicality, but it changes the entire shape of a tournament. Unseeded, you can draw a top 5 player in the very first round and be finished in an afternoon. Seeded, the system is built to protect you from the very best players until later rounds, which means you get rounds to find your rhythm, to settle your nerves, to let confidence build match by match instead of being thrown straight into the fire. Her first-round opponent was Renata Zarazua of Mexico, a former doubles partner turned opponent, ranked 76th in the world. And this next detail matters because of just how thin Eala's Wimbledon history actually was up to that point. Heading into this match, she had never won a main draw match at Wimbledon in her career. Not once. Her only previous appearance had ended in that 3-set first-round loss to Krejcikova the year before. She fixed that in 1 hour and 18 minutes. Eala demolished Zarazua, 6-1, 6-2, breaking her serve 4 times, striking 22 winners to Zarazua's 11. Her first ever Wimbledon main draw win. And then something happened that had nothing to do with tennis at all. A home crowd, 6,000 miles from home. When Eala walked off court behind the ovation, she noticed something strange. The crowd wasn't the usual polite, scattered Wimbledon applause. It was loud. It was specific. It was hers. I was really surprised to have what I would call a full house of almost Filipinos, she said afterward. I never would have thought at Wimbledon I would have like a home crowd. So super thankful. And I really enjoyed that. Wimbledon tickets are famously among the hardest in the world to get. A lottery system, years-long waiting lists, corporate hospitality prices that put tickets out of reach for most fans. And somehow, on an outside court in the first week, a huge share of the crowd was Filipino. Phones out, filling the air with noise for a player who, 12 months earlier, had lost in the very first round of this same tournament. That's not just a nice moment. That's the story of an entire nation's tennis hopes riding on one young woman's shoulders. And instead of crumbling under that weight, she was starting to feed off it. Which brings us to the match everyone had actually been waiting for. The rematch. Round 2. Waiting on the other side of the draw, Maya joint. The same player. The same surface. The same 4 championship points Eala couldn't convert 12 months earlier at Eastbourne. Now they were meeting again, at the tournament Eala had walked into as a heartbroken runner-up exactly 1 year before. It did not start well. Joint took the first set, 6-3, and for a moment, it looked like history was about to repeat itself in the cruelest possible way. The ghost of Eastbourne showing up right on schedule. Then Eala flipped it. She took the second set 6-2, forcing a decider. And in the third set, she did something that went well beyond just winning. She won it 6-0. A bagel set in a rematch against the player who had haunted her for a full year. Final score, 3-6, 6-2, 6-0. This wasn't just a win. It was closure. Eala had spent almost 12 months carrying the memory of 4 unconverted match points. Now she'd beaten the same opponent, on the same surface, in front of a crowd that had traveled across the world to watch her do it. If this were the ending of the story, it would already be one of the best comeback narratives in recent tennis memory. It is not the ending, it's the setup. What nobody saw coming, the defending champion. 2 rounds later, the third round of Wimbledon on center court, the most famous tennis court in the world, Alex Eala walked out across the net from Iga Swiatek. The exact same player she'd shocked at the Miami Open 16 months earlier. Except this time, Swiatek wasn't just a 5-time Grand Slam champion. She was the reigning, defending Wimbledon champion. Think about the weight of that matchup for a second. A 21-year-old seeded 29th, playing on center court for only the 3rd time in her life, against the woman who owned the title she was trying to win. The first set alone lasted 84 minutes. Momentum swung back and forth. Swiatek broke first, Eala answered immediately, broke again to lead, Swiatek clawed back, and it all came down to a tiebreak that Eala somehow closed out, 7-6 at 9 points to 7, saving 2 set points along the way. She followed it by taking the second set 6-2, closing out the biggest win of her career in 2 hours and 14 minutes. The defending Wimbledon champion beaten. Eala became the first Filipino player, man or woman, in the entire Open era, to reach the second week of a Grand Slam tournament. She could barely speak afterward. "I'm really emotional," she told the crowd, before breaking down mid-sentence. Maybe for someone like Iga, who's won so many slams, or someone like Serena or Venus Williams, this achievement may seem small. But for someone who grew up in the Philippines, she never finished the sentence. She didn't need to. Tennis legend Billie Jean King posted publicly afterward calling Eala an inspiration for kids in the Philippines and all over the world. Read that arc back for a second because it's worth sitting with. For unconverted championship points at Eastbourne, a first-round exit at her Wimbledon debut, a losing record on clay, back-to-back losses to the same player on 2 different surfaces, a straight sets defeat in her very last tune-up before the tournament. And from all of that, 12 months later, a 21-year-old from the Philippines beat the defending Wimbledon champion on center court and became the first player from her country to ever reach the second week of a major. How far did it go? So here's the part of the story that nobody was ready for, because by this point it genuinely felt like anything was possible. Waiting in the 4th round, Jasmine Paolini, the 13th seed, a 2-time Grand Slam finalist including a runner-up finish at this very tournament 2 years earlier. Eala actually held a winning head-to-head against her, having beaten Paolini earlier that same season at the Dubai Championships. It was close. It was a genuine battle going the distance across 3 sets. Paolini took the first set 6-4. Eala leveled it, taking the second 6-4. And in the decider, Paolini's experience on the biggest stages finally showed. closing it out 6-3 to end Eala's run in the 4th round. Eala's Wimbledon ended there. In the round of 16, the best Grand Slam result of her career, further than any Filipino player had ever gone at a major in the Open era. Not a title, not a final, a 4th round finish, capped by the single biggest win of her career 2 rounds earlier. And honestly, that's what makes this story better than a fairy tale, not worse, because a fairy tale ending would have made this feel finished. Like the story was over, the underdog had won it all, roll credits. This isn't that. This is a 21-year-old who is quite clearly still improving in real time, who just beat a defending Grand Slam champion on the sport's biggest stage, and who walked away from her career-best Grand Slam result saying this: "It was really tough, a roller coaster. 2026 proved me a lot. There were tough moments, but I kept working with my team supporting me. Every day I'm feeling better. I have to enjoy it. It's my superpower." Why this is bigger than one tournament? Step back from the scorelines for a second, because there's a bigger picture here that's easy to miss if you're only counting wins and losses. The Philippines is not a country with a deep tennis tradition. There has never been a Filipino Grand Slam seed before Eala. There had never been a Filipino player to reach a Wimbledon second week before this tournament. Every single milestone in this story, the Miami semifinal, the top 100 ranking, the Wimbledon seeding, the second week run, didn't just belong to Eala. It belonged to an entire country that had never had a reference point for what possible looked like in this sport. And she's not doing it in isolation. Southeast Asian tennis has been quietly building momentum across the region. Young players from Indonesia and Thailand pushing into WTA main draws and making noise against seeded opponents. Eala is, right now, the furthest out in front of that wave, and every result she produces raises the ceiling for what the next player from that part of the world believes she can do. That's really what this story is about, underneath the scorelines. Not revenge on Maya Joint. Eala herself never framed it that way. She talked about redemption and gratitude, not payback. It's about a player who spent 5 brutal months on clay absorbing losses that could easily have broken her confidence, who lost her very last tune-up match before the tournament that mattered most, and who then went out and beat both the opponent who'd haunted her for a year and the defending champion of the tournament itself, inside the same 9 days. If she can do all of that in a season that started with a losing record on her supposedly weaker surface, the real question isn't whether Eala belongs at the top of this sport. She's already answered that. The real question is just how much higher this goes from here, and if you want to see it unfold in real time, this is exactly the channel to be subscribed to when it does. Hit that subscribe button now because her story is still being written, and we'll be right here covering every match of it.